Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and Master Chief be getting a little too lucky these days. Now, yeah, the title of this video is not a joke. Our boy John117 be getting the good suck. Now to start off with, okay, I don't really care too much about television or movies to make videos on them, unless of course it really just gets to the point. Now if you've been watching the Some Ordinary podcast, greatest podcast in the world by the way, if I must say so myself, me, Oompy, and Nux always talk about this show. You know, I think 2 episodes straight up, we've just talked about our bad experiences. Now, I've never made a dedicated YouTube video because honestly, I don't care too much about a bad television show or movie, unless of course it really does hit me in the balls. Now, of course, Halo is a franchise I think me and many gamers have played with. I like Halo. I think he's a pretty cool guy. You know, he kills aliens and doesn't afraid of anything. Pretty awesome game, okay? Pretty awesome franchise. I've played every single mainline entry that's come out. I've even played Halo Wars, Halo Wars 2, and I love that shit to the end of the earth. Now, to get things started with, the Halo TV show has been announced forever, okay? Like, back in the days of 2013's Xbox One original announcement, we were basically, like, told, you know, they were gonna make this show a thing. Now, of course, years later, a long time, you know, some Metal Gear Solid 5, Man Who Sold the World, Wake Up from a Coma level times, Halo's show finally dropped on Paramount Plus. Now, with a budget of $90 million, which sounds like a lot, but when you're filming a show that's mostly set in a CGI haven like Halo, tends to dry up pretty quick. But it wasn't the budget that got me. It was actually one of the showrunners initially saying, everyone who spoke with Variety actually cited Halo's expansive mythology as the factor that differentiated the series from other video game fare, that made it so attractive as source material. Okay, you read that? Let me read the next part. We didn't look at the game, says Season 1 showrunner Stephen Kane. We didn't talk about the game, we talked about the characters and the world. So I never felt limited by it being a game. Ooh! Oh, at this point I knew there was some trouble in paradise. Now, before we go, but Muna, the Halo comes in books, anime, and dildos. Look, I don't care if they're making, like, you know, adult toys of Halo at this point. I get it. Halo has a lore of like 20 years at this point, okay? There's books, there's comics, there's anime adaptations, there's movies, there's podcasts like Hunt the Truth that are absolutely some of the best forms of Halo like lore that one can consume. But I would wager to say that 90% of the player base, 99% of the player base almost, has mostly experienced Halo through the video games. You know, if it wasn't for the video games, if it wasn't for that initial Apple showcase of Halo as an RTS, nobody would really care about Halo. Most of the people that have joined into the Halo bandwagon have played the video games, all right? And for most people, that's all they'd ever touch. Now, Halo is such a good franchise, in my opinion, that covering the books is not really a hard sell. It's a good lore that's written by talented people that if you really get into Halo, you're probably going to read that stuff as well. But most people get a lot of their shit from the video games. If the people making the show for one of the most beloved sci-fi series of all time in gaming aren't even touching the games, that's not a good sign, okay? Now, to understand, the Halo TV show is not canon, okay? Meaning whatever happens in the show does not reflect on what's happening in the video game world, which thankfully is the case because, man, they have really deviated from the world of Halo. Let me get this started. To understand, I think the show is made technically well. Like, it looks okay. The CGI is a little bit cringy to watch sometimes because it's just, in my opinion, the CGI is not that good. The live action stuff makes up for it. Like, it's generally okay. Like, it's got the Halo sci-fi feel down. You know, obviously they weren't going to go to Blur Studios to make those amazing Halo 2 remastered CGI cutscenes or even recreate Halo Wars or Halo Wars 2 because the show's budget is 90 million, not 500 million. So obviously they couldn't afford that level of crazy high-end CGI. So we got what we got. Now, to understand, I'm not joking, but this is Master Chief. Now, you might be like, whoa, where's the Mjolnir armor? Boys and girls, I have seen more of Master Chief's rectum than I've seen my own rectum. Yeah, within like the first episode, he just basically takes off the helmet and it just gets progressively far off. Yeah, this is Chief without the shirt on. He's got a dog tag only. You might be wondering who this lady is in front of him, and that lady would be one of the chosen ones from the Covenant. Yeah, she's like a Covenant, like human, character. Maquis is what her name is, and she's basically like taken in prisoner. She's basically rescued by the UNSC. Master Chief bones her, okay, and Cortana's just watching in the background like it's some cuckold porn. I think the actual scientific term might be cuck queen, but that's generally what you're getting. Yeah, Master Chief bones in this entire story. Now, what's really wild to me is lore-wise, I've always questioned if Spartan 2s, which is what Master Chief is, John 117, actually even have an active sex drive, simply because they go through so many physical and mental augmentations that their actual like sex drive would be diminished. Not completely gone. Obviously they can have sex, but the ability for them to procreate, deliver children is it should be a pretty challenging task given what they have went through since the age of 6, okay? The fact that Master Chief gets it up faster than a fucking porn star in this entire thing is a little wild, a little out there. It's to the point where, like, I feel like the show is made for so many, like, people outside the Halo fandom that you can look at Forbes articles where they're like, Sorry, hold on. Is Master Chief going to have a baby with the Covenant spy in the head? It's like people who are in this have no idea. Like the people watching it, the people that I guess is trying to cater to have no idea that like this doesn't even make sense from a lore perspective. And the reason why fans get a little uppity about this is not just this scene in particular. There's a lot of Spartan 2 lore that that just gets sort of tossed out the entire window. For instance, this bullet, and I don't want to show you any like, frame of this like in motion because Angry Joe's been facing like, copyright disclaimers up the ass with Paramount. And I'm not trying to walk into that, okay? I'm just going to show you stills, and I'm going to give you as much context as I honestly can. This little pill right here is stuck just above the anal cavity of Master Chief, and it's what they call the emotional regulator. Yeah, I've never heard about this in the Halo lore, but apparently Spartan 2s in this universe have like an emotional regulator in their spine, which I guess inhibits their emotions or whatever. I mean, it comes with the name. Even though in the entire game's lore, a lot of these Spartan 2s are abducted at the age of like 8 and put through so much physical augmentations, mental augmentations, and they have a really stunted social development that really shows you that they're not emotionally all the way there. It's not that Spartan 2s can't converse with human beings normally or show some shred of humanity. It's just they don't really have, or you shouldn't expect them to have a lot of social skills amongst just themselves. They grow up amongst themselves, amongst the other Spartan 2s, but obviously there's like a social discount. The fact that you have emotional regulators and Master Chief's just like digging into his spine to dig those out and like get back his emotions, I guess, is a little bit of a shocker to us, okay? Now, even in this entire show, Catherine Halsey, who's like the doctor behind the Spartan projects, straight up doesn't tell them that they've even been kidnapped. If anybody knows Halo lore, you know that every Spartan 2, like Master Chief, has been abducted at the age of 8 and put through so much augmentations to become these like war assets for the UNSC, okay? Now, of course, in the entire like games, Halsey basically tells the children, yeah, we kidnapped you. You've been kidnapped. But hey, listen, kids, fuck your parents. You're gonna stop, bad guys. You're gonna be there to, save humanity, okay? Fight for some greater cause. And these kids get really indoctrinated to the point where like they just consume that shit. This is all they know. It was even a plot point that was really touched upon Halo Infinite where like, Master Chief's like, that's all he knows. That's all he knows. Save humanity, whatever the cost, kill, 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 stop the Covenant. That's it. That's what these kids have done. That's how they've been indoctrinated. The fact that they go the complete opposite way in the entire show baffles us, okay? It really does baffle the average person. And even when it comes to the UNSC, they're painted as like the really big bad person in the entire show, which you don't need to tell me that the UNSC is a bad organization. Any organization that would willingly use child soldiers and physically augment them to the point where they're not really even representative of human beings in the grand scheme of things is a bad organization. In the show, there's like a planet called Madrigal, which basically creates like the space oil that they need to power up like fusion reactors. Basically, Madrigal is run by rebels and insurrectionists, which like we know exist in the Halo universe. So basically, Spartans land down and they stop a Covenant attack over here, and basically the UNSC then instills like their own leader, who's like a straight up dictator Nazi in the entire thing that just straight up kills people for rebelling against the UNSC. But hey, the UNSC, they're like, whatever, as long as we're getting our oil, who cares? I think this is a really cool aspect of the show, right? Like, obviously, after the Human Covenant War ends in the games, which it doesn't end in this one because they're still technically, I believe, at the height of the war, we tend to look at the UNSC like, wait, okay, we beat the Covenant, or the war stopped. What kind of war crimes did we commit to get here? So obviously, I like the fact that we're looking at the UNSC in a much more, like, realistic light, like, not just as a unified Earth government, but also as a unified government that has done some atrocious things to get to where they're at. You know, a plot point that was touched upon in Halo 4 was like the idea of like the Spartans being created as a way to crush human opposition, human rebellion. And while that's true, everyone looked the other way because at the same time the Covenant attack, and they're like, wait, we have these super soldiers, let's just forget all about the human control shit. Let's stop the aliens first, and then we'll focus on this afterwards. I like the idea of that being touched, especially in a television show where, like, you know, they can't really have like an action scene every 5 minutes like the video games, which basically are just glorified action games, right? You have the option to touch upon these really key moments in the entire lore. You can talk about the UNSC, you can talk about the Oni being like space CIA and doing some fucked up shit the entire time. You can look at the inner politics between the Covenants and the UNSC, and I think that's all really, really cool. However, where this show really falls flat is its portrayal of Halo. It really doesn't feel like a lot of the source material is taken into account in a way that it should be. You know, to be honest with you, I think the most egregious shit is just witnessing Chief rip out emotional regulators constantly, like, or at least get into these sexual scenes with like a Covenant character, which makes no sense. And the idea that, you know, even in the games, you have moments where Chief is a human being. He has these moments. He has these moments where you see personal development. He's not just a killing machine. He's not just somebody that gives one-liners like, boo, all right, just to scare like a grunt every once in a while. This is a man that has a complex connection with Cortana, an AI that he's been paired with, an AI that he grows to love over time, and he's shared his battles with, you know, throughout the entire franchise. A person that has made friends on the battlefield, all right, a person that has like literally seen the ends of the earth, if you will, a person that has experienced some really traumatic shit. This is like a character that goes beyond just being like a killing machine. You see a level of humanity in Chief even in the video games, and you just don't really see that reflected the same way in the show. And of course, the show is not canon, it's different, but it's just something that's making any Halo fan watching cringe. I almost feel like the showrunners for this had an entirely different idea in mind. Maybe they thought they were getting the rights to something like Mass Effect, and eventually they just ended up getting Halo, stamped that on there, and really didn't care about the source material they dug into. The fact that they didn't look at the game really does show in the grand scheme of things. I'm going to go one step further and say that they didn't even look at the novels. They didn't even look at a lot of the other media that Halo has created. I feel like somebody on the show was just told that, hey, this is Master Chief, and he dresses up in green armor and like blows shit up. Oh, here's like Covenant characters. Here's what the elites look like. Here's Halsey. Hey guys, here's the keys. And they were just like, oh, okay. Let's just. They made their own adaptation, and that's pretty much what it is. If you're a Halo fan, you're going to spend the entire show just cringing. And they've already been renewed for season 2, which I think the only reason they've been renewed is because this is part of a streaming subscription. So I don't think that Paramount cares if you're watching Halo. They just care if Halo can draw in subscriptions. I don't personally believe this is going to make to like season 3 in the current state that it is. But I know that I've been saying a lot. I know that I've been stating a lot of my own opinions on this and just my, focus on the show. But that's pretty much where it is. I think as a whole, show, if you don't care about Halo, you're probably going to flick it on and just watch it. And I think it's enjoyable if you're not a Halo fan. If you're just somebody that's like, space opera drama, let's just watch it. But if you're a Halo fan, I think it's just better you stick with the video games and whatever media that exists, because this show just does not cut it, okay? In some capacities, it's fine, but when you get to these points specifically regarding Master Chief, or just anything important or anything lore-wise, it just comes across as a cringe fest. That's pretty much all I can say about the show. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time I saw Master Chief getting laid. And that's not something I'd ever thought I'd be saying in my lifetime, to be honest with you. But I am. That being said, this is me, Mutahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.